Hey there, gamers. DreamcastGuy here. Today we're talking about the Final Fantasy Tactics remake because it is finally here and it is just way better than I ever could have imagined. You see, I'm a very old school fan of Final Fantasy, especially the OG ones from the 90s and stuff, but Tactics especially, this is by far the deepest, most beloved, most intricate, most eye-opening of all the random spin-offs. And a lot of people for the last 30 years have specifically been begging for Tactics to come back, but there's always been a very big problem. A lot of the games that Square Enix made in the 90s, they deleted. They're gone. They just vanished. So they couldn't exactly just make an upscaled version or a standard remaster. They actually had to go in and completely rebuild the entire game from scratch. But in doing that, they also had a chance to sort of improve it, to put in extra systems, full voice acting, fix the script, and basically make the original game somehow even more perfect. But I want to talk about this version of it because I do think it's really, really dang good. But I want to just ramble about everything that makes it so incredibly good and why, even if you've never played a Final Fantasy, even if you've never played a tactical battler, this is a game you need to try, even if it does have some problems. But let's get into it. Hi, hope you're having a great day. And if you could, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's start with what Final Fantasy Tactics is and why, honestly, this version feels incredibly different in a way that makes the original. Honestly, it's got a lot of improvements that make an already good game feel a lot more modern. Let's start with the fact that, honestly, Tactics is a kind of difficult game to initially figure out. You know, turn-based combat, that's something I think everybody kind of understands. You and the enemy have speed stats, choosing who goes, what elemental types, which big damage, which big crits. A lot of that stuff I think is something we all can grasp very initially. Whereas when it comes to tactics, what makes this game so incredibly deep is the job system. Essentially, every character, as they level up, as they sort of customize their specific playstyles, they can choose to be a warrior or a dragoon or a chemist to throw better potions or a summoner to summon down actual gods to blow up people and stuff like that. Black mages, white mages. But during the course of this, everybody moves and acts differently. Certain classes have more movement, more attack power, the ability to actually hit multiple squares at once. Support classes can not just heal, but actually even up your defenses or up your speed. It makes a game that has a very unique amount of constant depth, a sense that grinding is such a reward. Now, what makes this incredibly motivating? It's not just, honestly, that very fun style of battle and grind and level up. It's the fact that the story of this game is utterly fantastic, which brings me to the biggest new change. Now, a lot of old school Final Fantasies had some very serious translation errors, just straight up things that were wrong. Like, this is well known, but there were actually times where games would get dialogue incorrect. One person would say another person's line in the translated version of it, or in the Tactics original version, they messed up a lot of the military ranks and stuff, and it was kind of a mess. Honestly, old school Final Fantasy, as much as I love them, a lot of them, when they revamped and updated those scripts, the games became a lot more understandable. So they already technically did a remake of Tactics back on the PSP called War of the Lions, and I love that version of the game. The War of the Lions script is flawless. They took the War of the Lions script and put it into this game, but it's more than that. We have to talk about, honestly, the simply just gorgeously beautiful freaking voice acting. The story of Final Fantasy Tactics is incredibly complex, with tons of different factions and betrayals and backstabbing and feudal alliances that are constantly trying to fight off against the peasantry in other kingdoms. It is a very, very, very cool power struggle. And honestly, what makes Tactics such an addictive game is that, honestly, the more you study it, the more you understand it, the more you pay attention, it really does have one of the deepest stories of any Final Fantasy ever. And I think that's part of the reason that they ended up doing so many different sequels that take place in this land. This takes place in a place called Ivalice, and there's actually multiple games games like Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, A2, even Final Fantasy 12, even sections of Final Fantasy 14 actually take place in Ivalice. And it's just because the story is so incredibly deep. But in the original version, as much as I loved it, sometimes there was sort of a tone that was missing, which is that in a lot of these cutscenes and stuff, as people talk about, hello, brother, it is time to make our timid alliance. Seeing these characters, the main two guys are named Ramza and Delita, seeing them deal with their family squabbles, these terrible bloodshed battles and stuff like that. Sometimes there was an unsaid subtext that kind of could be hard to tell. In certain scenes, somebody says they're here to team up with you when really they're there to completely screw you over, but you can't tell when it's just text. You can't feel that unsaid anger, that subtle tone in somebody's voice that says, hey, I'm mad and I'm here because it's against my will, but I have to help you. I'm going to screw you over the second I get a chance. The voice acting actually conveys and adds so much extra depth to this already deep story that truly boggles the mind. I mean, I genuinely cannot express how good this voice acting is, especially, obviously, Ben Starr from Final Fantasy 16 is back, but there is a secret character. This isn't a spoiler, but I have to say this. There is a secret character, which is Cloud Strife. When this game was coming out, obviously they were making it. Final Fantasy VII was the biggest game on the planet. So Square Enix said, all right, we got to do some sort of like FF7 crossover. So Cloud Strife is a hidden unlockable character in this game. And if you get him, he actually is voiced by the same Cloud as the FF7 remake. It's that Cloud. So hearing him, seeing him in cutscenes, hearing his interactions, seeing his custom interactions, honestly, there is an amount of beautiful extra quality to this already extremely good game. But I want to talk more about the changes to this because honestly, if this game was just that, I do think it would need a bit more, which thankfully it does have. So the original game could be at times overly brutal. I think the biggest complaint that people have about old school Final Fantasy Tactics is that leveling could be hard and the bosses could at times be impossibly difficult. There are some bosses where you get stuck in an area and you have to win a boss fight, and if you didn't, it would actually brick your save file. It would actually break your save file if you didn't preemptively save before this big, really, really tough fight. Now the game has auto saves and it has difficulties that can be toggled at any time. There's 3 separate difficulties. There's Squire, which is a completely new casual mode. There's Knight, which is the normal difficulty that's pretty close to the original, but I want to talk more about that in a second. And a new Tactician difficulty, which to me feels about 20% harder than the original version was. But I almost feel like even the harder difficulty feels easier than the original game. And I mean this as a compliment, which is that, honestly, I hate difficulty spikes. I think the best stories, the best campaigns, the best RPGs have that slow ramp up. Everything gets more complicated, more difficult at a nice, even pace. So you always feel properly challenged and properly motivated to get tougher, right? Whereas the original version of Tactics, and I say this because I recently replayed it, this isn't like some memory, I'm literally going off current tense, I just replayed it. Certain battles in Tactics, things got 10 times harder. There were boss fights where there's one enemy that has way too much health and like 20 minions that can basically one-shot you, and you have to kill that boss before the minions can get to you. Stuff like that that I felt just didn't really vibe with the flow of the rest of the game. They've done a better job at making, honestly, the difficulty scale feels a lot more even, but they've also done a lot of cool quality of life changes that to me are extremely fun. You can now fast forward battles. Some of the fights in Final Fantasy Tactics can take you almost an hour for even random battles, because you do have to think about your elevation, your tactics, your mana pool, your ability to actually fight against specific enemies or beasts or weapon breakers, right? Now, I like the fact that, honestly, that is cool, but also turn order is now on the screen. You used to have to go into the menus of the old school version to see who's going to fight next. Now you can see who's coming up, what's about to happen, and sort of prepare yourself of, oh, the boss is about to take a turn. Oh, this big bad is about to take a turn. Oh, my guest is about to take a turn. I like the fact that, honestly, the flow of combat feels so much more modernized, but in ways that feel subtle. It doesn't feel like they're just basically making it baby mode. it feels like a better version of the original game. But they've also done a lot of tiny tweaks. Some classes feel like they've buffed or nerfed them in just tiny ways that makes them a lot more homogenized. And I do mean this as a compliment because I did notice some stuff like ninjas. Some of the classes felt like they were way too strong. They're still tough, but I like the fact that some of the weaker classes that had problems had been fixed. Like recently replaying Black Mage, I swear, Black Mage, as you unlocked better and better magic, Fire, Fire-Aga, all the biggest, baddest spells, there wasn't really an even exchange. Like sometimes you'd paying double the mana for not really double the attack power and stuff. They've done a good job of basically making it where a class that's getting stronger actually feels properly stronger. So when you get to those really terrible boss fights that are extra hard, now they feel like a rewarding challenge instead of practically a lucky roadblock. And I think that part of it just comes down to the fact that you can also do stuff like redo moves. If you accidentally screw up something, you can go back. There's also auto saves at the beginning of every fight. So if you screw something up completely, there is permadeath in this game. If one of your characters actually gets to 0 HP, they fall on the ground, you can now actually not only redo that thing, you can just go back and restart the fight. I did that multiple times when I was doing very, very bad, and it felt cool to just basically fix my mistakes and progress forward in a way that felt very natural. Everything about this new version of the game just looks better, it plays better, but it does bring me to one of my tiny complaints. I guess I have two tiny complaints. I do think that as good as this new art style is, something about it, I have to admit that I do still like the original more. I'm a big fan of sprites. I think sprites are somehow more expressive. I almost think that retro graphics sometimes gives your brain more room to kind of fill in the gaps. Your imagination of it sort of fills in better than any graphics could actually be. And here, they tried to have these extra expressive caricatures that I think are good. I'm not going to say they're bad, but I do personally, I do prefer the original look more. I think this is better. It's better looking. It's definitely better looking resolution, and it looks great widescreen instead of being 6:9. But I do personally wish that I still had the OG sprites. Maybe if I buy this on Steam at some point, maybe somebody will find a way to like mod some sprites in there. I mean, I'd probably replay this just with a sprite mod because I do like the way the original game looked. But also, there was a very purposeful choice. The little like rigidy art of the original game was decided deliberately. The director of the game, the creator of the game, was a guy named Yasumi Matsuno, and he said his whole idea was that he wanted tactics to look like a picture book or dioramas. He wanted to look like you're sort of looking in on this crazy, complex, terrible civil war and all the people living and dying for the gods and stuff like that. He wanted it to look like that little piece of the world you're glancing into. And I think that's great, but I do have to say that, I don't know, I do wish that there was some way I could play the original version with the trophy support and with these modernizations. The only other tiny gripe I have, man, they still have weapon breaking in this, and I still hate gear breaking. It's a tiny thing. In this game, you can do side quests, you can do main quests, and honestly, I think it's great. There's now quest markers and stuff. It makes it a lot easier to understand when there's side objectives and stuff. I think they're actually, a lot of these updates are great, but some of the stuff you unlocked is breakable. Now, this is a low chance. You don't break stuff constantly. It's a very, very low chance that your stuff breaks. But I'll be honest, every time anything did break, if it had like a 5% chance of shattering, anytime it did, I'd immediately restart the battle because re-earning these items, regathering them, requesting for them, doing the turn-ins again, a lot of times was just such a pain. I'll be honest, I would straight up wish there was a toggle where I could just say, I don't want weapon breaks. I thought it was a dumb mechanic 30 years ago. I just think it's not a good mechanic now. I just feel like weapon degradation in a game that is so slow and so methodical, to me, just doesn't make logical sense. Honestly, this is such a good game. It's a better version of a game that I already loved. I feel like the voice acting really improves it. The world looks so much more realized. This special encyclopedia now that actually lets you see what events are happening at what time, sort of looking back on the story as you're going through it. I just think that across the board, this updates the game and feels very faithful to the original. It doesn't feel like a bastardization. It doesn't feel like a cash grab. It does feel like a true passion project, which in a very soulless modern day, I feel like was very, very needed. Okay, so we've heard a lot of good and a little bit of bad, but let's go to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, gamers, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. I really enjoyed doing this video. Thank you for watching. Play Tactics. Play Tactics, my gosh, does it absolutely deserve every bit of the love. Oh, man. I love these old school strategy guides. The pictures are so blurry in it. Oh, my God. The good old days. Prima strategy guys.